Welcome back to another video interview podcast thing. Clint and Cole here with Mike Carmin of the Lafayette Journal and Courier. We are both here in the Midwest. It's nasty outside. It's February 10th. We just got done with the media availability via Zoom with Sasha, Eric, and Coach Painter. Sasha's back. Eric Hunter spoke about, his task of guarding Marcus Carr tomorrow night, and then Coach Painter obviously just talked about a few different things. But let's start with the game tomorrow night at Minnesota. The first meeting, Purdue, as Matt said, was down 24-10 in the first half. They closed the gap to only trailing by 5 at halftime, and then just blew them out of the water in that second half. That's not a good formula for success. You don't want to fall behind 15 points in the first half and then try and work your way back. So what are some things, I guess, you're looking for tomorrow night? Obviously, they held Marcus Carr in check. But, what are you kind of looking for tomorrow?
Well, just how Purdue comes out and plays Minnesota, because in that first game, they spent a lot of time trying to keep the ball out of Carr's hands, and also, didn't want Liam Robbins to beat them as well. So Minnesota's other players were left with open shots on the perimeter, three-point line, and they hit them. And I think they were maybe 6 of their first 8 or 7 of their first 9 or something like that. And I think Painter was just kind of willing to let that play out to see if that trend would reverse itself, and it did. And then he was also told that Marcus Carr then in the second half would go nuts and score like 25 points, and then Minnesota would win. Well, that didn't happen because I think Purdue's defense was pretty good. Eric Hunter was pretty good, and Purdue went 8 of 10 from 3. So that helped stretch the lead. You had different guys hitting three-pointers, and that was a big bonus. So I think how they play them early, do they play them the same way? You have to pay attention to Carr, and you have to pay attention to Robbins. And so I would expect some of the similar approach to the first game. But how does Minnesota then counter that? Does Robbins go more inside, trying to get maybe Travion or Zach in foul trouble, play to his strengths? Because I think he shot probably a few more threes than Minnesota wanted him to in that game. And then just how Carr does he take the game over early? Does he do the things he did here? He's a facilitator, because he doesn't score in the first half and they're up 5. So it was all setting up well for Minnesota. But those are the few things I think to look for to see how that matches up. And then Brandon Newman had 29 in that game. He's going to be a target for them defensively. So assuming he doesn't have the same kind of game, who steps up and carries the load offensively, or what group of players step up and do that? And we'll just, the game is still pretty fresh in people's mind because it was less than 2 weeks ago. So just really interested to see how that plays out.
Coach Painter said that Ivy will start again. Then he did mention, it's not, you hear this from coaches, it's not really who starts, but who finishes. Right. So and that kind of brings me to the next point of what this group of freshmen has done so far. This season, it's been pretty remarkable to see what they've done. And, lots of comparison to, it's not even in question. It's the best class since Robbie and Juwan and them a few years back, and Etuan a few years back. But sustainability down the stretch, going to the barn is traditionally a very tough place to play, but there's no fans. That seems to, you're still going on the road, but that's the whole no fans in the stands at the barn would seem to help the freshmen, with being on the road, you'd think.
I don't think a lot really affects this freshman group. I think they play. They just play. They're players. They're used to playing. They're used to being in their own big moments. It doesn't seem like a lot phases them. Even though Zach Edey hasn't played a whole lot in his career, but he doesn't seem to get rattled by anything. He was 8 for 8 at the free throw line against Northwestern, and that's for a big man to hit 8 free throws in a game. I know he takes a lot of pride in that. And overall Purdue was 23 of 24 from the free throw line. But this freshman group, is, is just they have a certain composure to them, but they also have I think a high level of maturity to them, where they don't let things bother them. And the one guy that isn't playing a whole lot that was expected to play was Ethan Morton, but had the mono setback. Here's a very talented guy, and we're not seeing it this year. We won't see it this year because of, we're 20 games deep into the season, and Matt's just not going to change things for that. He'd like to get him more playing time, but he's not going to disrupt things. But once Ethan Morton gets going and he becomes an integral part of this team and everything, there's another level for this group when you add him to the mix. And I think you'll see that over time, over the next year or two. But this is a freshman group that's made him go. But the difference between this group and then Hummel's group is this group has Travion Williams, they have Eric Hunter, they have Sasha, they have a veteran presence. They don't have to lead the team in scoring.
Right.
Where Hummel in that group, Hummel led the team. I think Hummel led the team in scoring. They had Chris Kramer and I think Keaton Grant, but I think Hummel ended up leading the team in scoring that year. So they probably needed a little bit more from that group from an offensive standpoint. Whereas this group, you don't absolutely need it. You welcome it, but you don't need it because there's so many other guys that can score. But they're definitely going to leave a mark in this program, on this program. And you just, from a Purdue fan standpoint, you just hope that they stick together for as long as possible.
It's I remember back when Carson really started to turn into Carson, one of the big things was finally have someone that can create their own shot, that you can give the ball to down the stretch. And it's not I don't want to say, throwing it into the big, to Travion is a bad thing down the stretch, but, Travion's not running the show with the ball in his hands. And now you've got like Carson was able to, whether it was finding Klein or doing it himself or whatever it might have been. But now you've got a handful of guys, young guys that, as they grow, it's like, yes, we can count on Brandon, we can count on Jaden, to down the stretch if you need a bucket.
Yeah, and you do have several of those guys that you can count on, and I think Jaden, like Carson, probably eventually balances that out between being a point scorer and also being a facilitator, and understanding that when two or three guys come to him, somebody's open somewhere, and you're going to have good enough shooters on the team this year, but also in the future, that he's going to be able to find them. And that's, Purdue has that now. They have that guy that can break down a defense off the dribble. And that was go back to the Ohio State game where he hits the game-winning three. I mean, that was the initial plan, was for him to get to the basket and draw a foul or, finish at the rim. Shooting the three was the last option in that play. It was most successful, but it was the last option in that play. So I think this freshman class each one brings a different skill set as well. You don't have 4 or 5 of the same guys. Each one is different. And, that helps you kind of build a team and put you in a position to be successful.
We were talking about the days off in between games coming up for Purdue. And, they got Minnesota tonight. And then I was just looking at the schedule. I don't know why it closed, but Michigan State on Tuesday. That Nebraska game, has that been scheduled yet? It
has not been scheduled yet, but it'll probably, it might get stuck in there because they go to Lincoln on the 20th.
Okay.
And then I think they're off until the next Friday at Penn State. And so it could get stuck somewhere in there. It could get stuck going into the final week somewhere. But, when I asked Matt that question, it's like, you're going to get 2 or 3 days off between games. And that, as you go down the stretch, you always talk to our coaches about tired legs, about guys, needing a break and trying to be as fresh as possible going into the postseason. And I think the way Purdue's schedule is set up now, that I think that gives them that opportunity to kind of be as fresh as possible once the Big Ten tournament starts, and then you go right into the NCAA tournament. But Matt also said that he's still going to, obviously they're still going to practice. He wants to make sure the fundamentals stay sharp. But you're not leaning on your guys as much as you do in October and November from a time standpoint. Just kind of this quick get in, quick get out type of thing. But the schedule with the days off, along with who they're playing, should allow Purdue to finish the season on a pretty good note heading into the Big Ten tournament, regardless of where they stick that Nebraska game.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that. I mean, it is not out of the realm of possibility to think that Purdue can win each and every one of their final games. I mean, the toughest game on paper is Wisconsin, but you get them at home, and then IU is always a tough game. You never know what's going to happen. Well, recently we know what's going to happen, but I mean, the next game, you don't know what's going to happen. But at Nebraska, okay, that's you should win that game. Get them at home, should win that game. At Penn State, gave them a little bit of trouble at Mackey, but I mean, that's another game that as Purdue grows, I mean, that's a game that they need to win. I don't know. I mean, they continue to do what they're doing. I think they can, win what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 games, 5 out of 7 games. I mean, that's pretty reasonable.
Right. I think to me, the two toughest games are going to be on the road. It's going to be Thursday at Minnesota, and that Penn State game is going to be a difficult one. If anybody watched Penn State last night at Michigan State, they were down 8 to 10 points most of the game, came back and got the lead late, and then didn't have a couple shots go down, and a couple bad possessions late. But that's a team that Purdue can somehow either win both those road games or split those road games. I think it puts them in a really good position for the NCAA tournament. Puts them in a good position for the Big Ten tournament. The Wisconsin game at home will be tough just because of who Wisconsin is. But I'm looking at those 2 road games as ones that can really kind of push you into the postseason on a pretty good wave of momentum, and just kind of give this team another level of confidence and another level of toughness, being able to win one or both of those games on the road.
Would have been nice to get that Maryland win there. I mean, that's
probably should have.
Yeah.
You're up with 3 minutes to go. You get outscored 12-4, and the one area they had played really well in that game was keeping Maryland off the offensive rebounds. They only gave up 3 for the game, but when they gave up led to the free throws that won the game, and that was Maryland's only second. Those 2 points were only Maryland's second chance points for the whole game. So Purdue did a really good job keeping them to one shot most of the time, but then you got to finish it out. I don't think it really changed anything about what Purdue's season was going to be about. But then when the Northwestern game came about and they made a late charge, Purdue was able to kind of hold them off and maybe learned a lesson a little bit from the Maryland game to close out that one at Northwestern or against Northwestern.
You think about obviously in any season, in any sport, whatever team it is, get your close games, and then obviously you want to have a winning record in those close games. You think of the Michigan State game, the Ohio State game. I mean, so they have won, some of those close games. You're going to lose some of those close games. You obviously don't want to, but it is going to happen. So it's not like they've been absolutely terrible in those close games. They have gotten some of those close wins.
Yeah, you're right. A 20-game Big Ten season, you just don't win every close game that comes your way, and you're going to lose your share. And that's the thing. To me, that was no. Yes, the Maryland loss was a little bit. I'm not going to use the word devastating, but it hurt a little bit just because they had a lead late. But we've also seen this team come back from leads at Michigan State, at Ohio State. They've been down double digits in more than half of their Big Ten games, and they've been able to fight back in a lot of those. So it's not a trend. It's not something that continues to happen. But I do think it kind of puts them That's why I think I've said on my own podcast several times, I think Purdue's going to be one of those teams that when we get to the Big Ten tournament, that people are going to pick as the dark horse because they can string together 4 games in 4 days, or maybe 3 games in 3 days, depending on where they finish. They're still not in the class or the level of Illinois and Iowa, Michigan, just because they haven't beaten those teams.
Right.
But they have beaten Ohio State twice. They do have Wisconsin coming up.
We get a chance.
So yeah, so I just think they're going to be that one team that's below the top teams that I think people are going to lock in on and say, yeah, that's look out for Purdue. And I think that's justified, and I think that's real. I think they could go down there and win the Big Ten tournament, but we got several games before that.
We got a month before that. I want to wrap things up. I mean, yeah, who knows what's going to happen in this next month? It's wild season. Wrap things up here with a few Big Ten things. We were talking before we started recording. I asked you, I don't know, last time before I went to California I left on the 19th. So it's been, 3 weeks or so, almost a month since we talked, and we were talking about teams at the top, and we didn't even mention Michigan. And it's and they're third ranked team in the country now, and I think Ohio State's 4 or whatever it is, they're top 5 or something. But I'm also looking at they've only played 9 conference games, and most teams have played 13, 14. What are they doing? Are they going to cram in all these games like Nebraska? I mean, what's the plan there?
Well, you would hope that they will, because you want to have as legitimate of a regular season conference champion as you can. Right. You don't want one team playing 11 and then other teams at the top playing 18 or 19. There's just too much of a difference there. So, they had to go on pause for 2 weeks, which wiped out 3, 4, 5 games for them. I think they were supposed to play this weekend against Illinois. And depending on who you want to listen to, they didn't want to come back and play Illinois, or, it just didn't work out. So, but they are running out of days, like Nebraska's running out of days. I would imagine that the goal at this point for the Big Ten is at least for every team to play every other team at least once. So if Michigan is scheduled to play Michigan State twice, but if you get one of those games in, I think that'll be fine. And I don't know if they have any more double plays they've got to get in. But there's going to be a little bit of an imbalance this year as far as the number of games played by everybody, and that's what it's going to be. But you just hope it's not a big gap.
Right.
That's what you hope. You just hope it's not a big gap, and you just hope that everybody's maybe around the 16, 17, 18 game mark. Therefore, you can have a good feeling about crowning your regular season conference champion.
As far as their talent goes, I mean, that's not in question. I mean, that team,
no. They are.
Yeah.
They are. The last time they played, which was at Purdue a few weeks ago, they are by far. At that point, I thought they were heads and shoulders above everybody in the Big Ten. Now, they hadn't played. I don't think they had played Iowa yet. I don't think they had played Illinois yet. So those would be their main competition right now. I don't think they played Ohio State either. So that'll be more of a true test. But how do they come back? And will it take them some time to get adjusted and back in the flow of things, because they haven't been able to practice for 2 weeks. And how long does it take them to get back into where they were, or do they even get back to where they were? But they're very solid. They're clearly an NCAA tournament team. They're clearly one of the top 4 teams in the conference. And in the end, it might be a good thing for them because they were able to, kind of get a break, and that maybe they can recapture some of the momentum late in the year and take that into the Big Ten and NCAA tournaments.
Last thing, I think why that popped up. Anyways, last thing, the TV schedule, I guess, came out for the NCAA tournament, and so Mackey is hosting the first 4 games. Is that right? Is that the only games they're hosting then?
They'll host the first 4 games. They'll host 2 first 4 games on March the 18th.
Okay.
And those times came out today, not the teams obviously, but the time came out today. And then they will host, I believe, 2 first round games on the 19th and 2 first round games on the 20th. So total, they'll get 6 games over 3 days in Mackey Arena. And the first round games could be, I would imagine, since those first 4 games are night games, with the last one potentially tipping off at like at 10 o'clock, that the games at Mackey Arena and Bloomington will probably be on Friday and Saturday, probably late afternoon type of games. I don't think you're going to want to turn things around that quickly or have the capability of turning things around that quickly, because they've left a bigger gap in those first 4 games between the games. Usually, you play a game, let's say at 6 o'clock, and then the next game scheduled for 8:30. They've scheduled one game at 5, and the next one at 8:30. So they built an extra hour, I think, for cleaning and just kind of getting things reset in the arena from a health and safety standpoint, just to give people extra time to get things done that need to get done. And I think we'll see that throughout the tournament. I think you're not going to have games, at least in the same venue, stacked on top of each other, other than maybe Lucas Oil, which will have 2 courts. So you're able to do that. But the other places, I think they're going to leave some gaps there to make sure things are taken care of from a health and safety standpoint.
It will be like there'll be no fans, obviously, so it'll be like.
Well, we don't know that for sure yet. I mean, we're
not a full stadium.
Right. No. It won't be a full house.
Not
but
a normal.
I think we know. I think parents and families of the players,
what they're doing now,
they'll probably get 4, maybe 6 tickets each that they can distribute amongst their family. So you're going to have some crowd presence, but you're right. You're not going to have what we normally would have. And the way I understand it is it's supposed to be the same throughout the state at every venue. Because let's say Bloomington can allow 50%, but in Lafayette, we can only allow 25%. So, I mean, they would come to some sort of common number, just so it's consistent throughout the whole place. The whole tournament's kind of dealing with the same situation, but we'll see as we get closer, what those numbers actually look like.
All right, Mike, appreciate it. Purdue tomorrow, I was gonna say tomorrow night, but they're playing at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. That time changed, and I think they switched to ESPN2. Is that right?
Yeah, they were supposed to be on BTN at 8, but they switched to ESPN2, and it would take an hour to explain exactly how all this came about. It all has to do with Nebraska's schedule.
Thanks a lot, Nebraska. All right, we'll talk soon. Appreciate your time, man, and I'll be down there for the game against Michigan State on Tuesday. So thanks again.
Thank you.